Okay. Guys,
Are you serious?
please. See you soon.
In a time not too far from now, Earth is crowded with people, and countries must find a way to reduce their populations by 5% each year. Some countries choose to get rid of the elderly or limit how many babies can be born. But in the USA, things are much darker. They have a test called the thinning, where students who score poorly are killed. In Texas, Governor Dean supports this terrible plan. His son Blake is not doing well in school, so he decides to fail the test on purpose. He wants to show his dad that this system is wrong. But instead of letting Blake fail, Dean cheats and switches Blake's score with Lena, the smartest girl in class. When Lena finds out about this trick, she and her friends tell everyone on the news. The shocking truth comes out. For years, rich kids have never failed because their scores were changed. Instead of admitting his wrongdoing, Dean blames Mason, the head of security, and lets Blake go to save his own reputation. At Blake's funeral, Dean pretends to be heartbroken while secretly planning his next move for the presidential election. Meanwhile, Lina is approached by reporters but dodges questions about suing the school. FBI agent Morris visits her at home and reveals she has a picture of Lina kissing Blake. Lina insists it was just a moment of sadness after losing her mother. Morris notices that Lina struggles with money while taking care of her younger siblings and that reporters are always outside her house. After Morris leaves, Dean's assistant Jack arrives and says the governor wants to meet Lena. She agrees, but gets angry when Dean offers her a job to help him look good. Even though she needs money, she refuses his offer. But on their way back home, Jack releases gas that makes Lena fall asleep. When she wakes up, she finds herself in an empty building with Jack and Miss Cole, her siblings' teacher. They belong to a group called The Fight that opposes the thinning system and knows how to help people escape the country. They want Lena to spy on Dean to stop him from becoming president. Meanwhile, Lena's friend Kellen starts working with a famous reporter named Wendy. He wants to uncover the truth about the school's actions, but is stuck doing small tasks at first. However, he investigates in secret and discovers something shocking at the funeral home. No one handled Blake's body. That night, Kellen convinces Lena to go with him to the cemetery. Together, they dig up Blake's grave only to find it empty. They learn that students who fail the thinning aren't killed. Instead, they are taken to a hidden factory owned by Ashura Global and forced to work as free laborers. Blake and other students are taken into a room where a cheerful video tells them they were chosen to help the country grow and get a second chance at life. The company promises that the best worker will be allowed back into society. While everyone else cheers, Blake feels uneasy. Later, they get devices implanted in their necks that assign them jobs in the factory. Blake wonders what will happen if he refuses to work, but guards quickly push him along. The next day, the students learn the rules of their new life. Each day is divided into 3 parts: 14 hours of hard work, 1 hour for eating and personal time, and then sleep. They must follow a strict curfew. As they watch a video showing different work areas, Blake is shocked to see Ellie, his high school girlfriend, among the workers. She failed the thinning test last year. Blake rushes over and kisses her, but Ellie tells him to wait until their free time. A boy nearby sees them. After work, Blake and Ellie sneak into an empty room to be together. That night, Blake talks with some other students, like Heather, who believe they were chosen for something special. Their chat is interrupted by a loud alarm. They look outside and see a boy trying to hurt himself. A group led by a boy named Cage encourages him to jump, but when he does, guards catch him with a net. Cage then yells, "Snip, snip," and Heather explains that anyone who refuses to work gets sent to the infirmary to be changed into someone who obeys. Suddenly, the boy who saw Blake and Ellie's kiss points at Blake through a window. Cage comes over and smugly tells Blake that Ellie is his now. He warns Blake that if he even looks at her, he will kill him. The next day in the cafeteria, Blake watches as Cage kisses and touches Ellie, who looks uncomfortable. Cage and his gang call themselves the Worthy. They were chosen by the company to supervise everyone else and are first in line for a chance to return to society. After Cage's group leaves the table, Blake confronts Ellie. She tells him to go away for his own safety. But then Cage's thugs surround Blake and tell him to leave too. Blake fights back and puts up a good fight until Cage catches him and calls for security. Blake pushes Cage away and runs off with Ellie, but as soon as they enter another room, guards catch them and beat them up. To Blake's shock, the leader is Mason, the same Mason who was supposed to keep him hidden. Mason is happy to see Blake, but takes revenge by breaking his leg. 8 months later, Dean is still campaigning with only a few days left before the election. Lina has been working on his team and saying nice things about him on TV while secretly sending information to Cole and Jack. Lina feels tired because nothing seems to change, but then Cole announces a plan. They need files from Georgina's computer. A hacker gives Lina a device so she can access it. Kellen overhears everything while trying to stay hidden, but Jack's team knows he is there. Later on, Dean needs practice for a debate, so Lina volunteers to pretend to be his opponent. This gives her a chance to say all the terrible things she thinks about him while pretending it's just practice. Meanwhile, Ashuru Global's stocks keep rising, and their technology spreads across the world. At the factory where Blake works, he tries hard to follow the rules so he doesn't get into trouble. He avoids talking to Ellie because he wants to protect her from Cage. His leg still hurts because every few days, Cage and his gang break it again at night. When Blake goes to see the doctor in the infirmary, she seems suspicious and asks questions about his injury. But Blake just says he fell down. He sees another student being dragged away for refusing to work and realizes there's no way out of this place. He asks the doctor for help, but she is too scared. During free time at the factory, cage fights happen where students battle each other for fun. Cage is the champion and very strong. He often leaves his opponents badly hurt. The guards don't intervene much during these fights until Blake convinces them that they need to take the latest loser to the infirmary or he will die from his injuries. When Cage spots Blake in the crowd, he vows that one day they will fight too. After the fight, Blake looks for Heather. He asks her to secretly tell Ellie to come to Cage's boxing match the next day. Heather touches Blake and suggests he should be with her instead, since it seems like his thing with Ellie is over. But Blake shakes his head and says no. Later, Heather finds Ellie and lies, saying Blake doesn't want to see her anymore. What Ellie doesn't know is that Heather is working for Cage, who promises to help her get a chance to return to society. Meanwhile, Kellen talks to Wendy about his research. He doesn't mention that he did a lot of hacking, but he tells her that the tablets used for the thinning tests are made by Ashuru Global. He explains that the company has doubled its production but laid off half its workers. Georgina, who works there, claims they use machines instead of people. Kellen discovers that Ashuru is paying for machines they never got. He even took a tour of their new campus and saw there wasn't enough room for all those machines. There's no paperwork about outsourcing either, but he finds out that Ashuru has been buying military rations for at least 100,000 people. Kellen concludes that the company is using students as slaves, but without solid proof, Wendy doesn't believe him. As Kellen gets into his car, a masked man suddenly appears behind him and tries to suffocate him with a bag. Kellen quickly hits the car alarm, scaring the man away. At home, Lena finds Blake in her room, and they start kissing. But suddenly, Blake turns into Jack. Lina wakes up from this strange dream because someone is knocking on her door. It's Kellen, who brings beer and plays loud music like he wants to party, but really, he just wants to talk privately. He shows Lina some notes explaining what's happening and warns her that Ashuru is always listening. To help him out, Lina gives Kellen Morris's card. On election day, Lina drops off her siblings at Cole's house. Cole promises to keep them safe and shows Lina a secret passage at the back of her house before she leaves. Jack picks up Lina and tells her he joined the fight to get revenge for his sister, who failed the exam because she has dyslexia. They arrive at Asuru's building, where Dean and his team are waiting for election results. Lina kisses Jack for good luck before heading to the bathroom. She locks the door and escapes through the window. Carefully walking along the edge of the building, she jumps to another window and slips inside Georgina's office. Using the hacker's device, she accesses the computer and discovers all the factory's secrets. Tears fill her eyes when she finds out Blake is actually alive. As she downloads the files, Jack overhears Georgina say she left something in her office. He quickly texts Lena to warn her. Lina asks for more time while Jack lies to Georgina, telling her Dean needs her urgently. When Georgina finds out Jack tricked her, she sends guards to arrest him. Meanwhile, the guards start getting suspicious about Lina's delay and break down the bathroom door. Just in time, Lina finishes downloading everything and rushes back into the bathroom as they break in. She opens the door and sees Jack being arrested. She runs outside to call Morris for help. At the factory, Blake waits for Cage to finish his latest match and challenges him to a fight. He says if he wins, he gets to be the leader. Surprisingly, Blake fights back fiercely despite his injured leg. While they fight, Ellie can't stop thinking about their breakup and leaves her work area. When guards find her alone in her room, she pretends to be unconscious. But when they try to touch her, Ellie suddenly bites one guard's finger. She fights back, but they are too strong and throw her against a mirror. Next, they tie Ellie onto a stretcher to take her away for modification, just as Heather watches from a distance, feeling guilty. Back in the ring, Blake gains the upper hand against Cage, but offers his hand for a truce instead of continuing to fight. Furious at this gesture, Cage knocks Blake down and starts kicking him. Realizing playing fair isn't working, Blake grabs his cane and strikes Cage with it in one swift motion. The crowd cheers loudly as Blake is declared the new leader, until an alarm suddenly blares through the factory. Heather rushes in and tells Blake about Ellie. Blake gathers Cage and his gang for an important talk. He explains that there is no way to return to society. They will be stuck in the factory forever. This news convinces the guys to help him come up with a plan. A little later, Blake goes back to work but pretends to get hurt in one of the machines. A guard takes him to the infirmary with the help of another worker. In the cafeteria, Cage starts a fight on purpose with another guy. Soon, all the other teens join in and chaos erupts. The guards rush in to try to calm everyone down. As the alarm blares, Blake and his friend fight off the guards in the hallway, easily taking them down and stealing their keys. Blake then heads to the infirmary, where he knocks out the doctor just before she can use her drill on Ellie. Suddenly, another doctor surprises Blake from behind and tries to capture him. Quick-thinking Blake grabs a syringe and stabs him before knocking him out too. After that, he shares a kiss with Ellie before using a scalpel to remove their tracking devices from their necks. Meanwhile, Mason storms into the cafeteria and starts attacking kids. Cage refuses to talk, but Mason checks his phone for the tracker and realizes Blake is behind everything. He follows the signal to the infirmary, but by then, Blake and Ellie have already escaped. Wearing doctors' uniforms, Blake and Ellie sneak around without being seen. At the same time, Lina meets Morris on top of a building. She hands over the device with all the information she has gathered. Morris warns Lina that she might be bugged and asks for her belongings. Suddenly, she destroys Lina's phone. It turns out Morris is corrupt. She pulls out a gun and tells Lina to jump off the building to make it look like a suicide. In Cole's tunnel, one of the rebels reveals himself as a double agent. He shoots the hacker and takes a kid hostage, explaining that Georgina threatened his family. The kid bites his hand to escape, and Cole uses a piece of wood to knock the man down before beating him up until he can't fight back anymore. Back with Morris, she gets distracted when her phone rings. Lina seizes this chance to push Morris down and snatch back her device before running away. Morris fires at her, forcing Lina to jump through a window and land in an old man's apartment below. Unfortunately, the device falls into a bucket of water. Lina rushes to Kellen's place, hoping he can fix it. Kellen puts it in rice and uses some heat to help dry it out faster. The trick works. Kellen quickly makes a copy of all the files onto another hard drive, just in case something goes wrong. He leaves to take the device to Wendy, but tells Lina to stay safe at home. However, as soon as Kellen starts his car, it explodes. Lina watches in shock from her window as Morris approaches with some men. She grabs the hard drive and sets up a trap using some objects around her apartment. When Morris's men come inside, they accidentally trigger her trap, causing an explosion that allows Lina to escape through the roof. But soon after, Morris finds Lina again. They start fighting, but Morris quickly overpowers her until Lina surprises her with a knife. She stabs Morris before pushing her down the stairs, killing her. Meanwhile, Dean learns he has won the election and begins celebrating with his team. In Cole's tunnel, she manages to escape with Lena's siblings into another country. Lina finally makes it to a TV station where she finds Wendy and hands over the hard drive. When Wendy sees all the information about Ashuru Global and learns about Kellen's death, she decides to cancel coverage of Dean's election speech and sends helicopters to investigate Ashuru. Back at the factory, Blake and Ellie discover a hatch on the floor that leads them into tunnels below. They have no idea that Mason is following them closely behind. After walking for what seems like forever, they find stairs that lead back up to the surface, but aren't sure where they are. Suddenly, Mason attacks Blake. A fierce fight breaks out as both teens try to take him down together. Mason overpowers Blake and starts choking him when a helicopter appears overhead, distracting Mason just long enough for Ellie to hit him with a rock. The helicopter captures everything on camera. Soon everyone in the country sees that Blake is alive on their screens. Dean panics while Georgina assures him she has everything under control. Moments later, Blake is brought into the TV station where Lina rushes over to kiss him, but freezes when she sees Ellie standing next to him. Meanwhile, Dean gives his first speech as president. Using this new power as president, Georgina orders police officers to arrest everyone who opposes Dean, including Blake, Ellie, and Lena. As their police car drives outside of town, it suddenly crashes when something hits it. The doors swing open to reveal Jack standing there. He explains he's with the FBI and wants their help in taking down Dean.